It was one of those cold November evenings when loneliness felt heavier than the air itself. The city lights flickered across wet pavement, and inside a small café tucked between two tall office buildings, a man named Ethan Ross sat at a corner booth, nervously checking his watch for the 5th time in 10 minutes. His heart beat fast, not from excitement but from the weight of what this evening represented. It wasn't just a blind date, it was his last attempt to believe that maybe, just maybe, he could find love again after years of heartbreak. Ethan had been alone for 3 years since his wife Claire passed away suddenly in a car accident. They'd been married for 6 years, 6 short, beautiful years that ended with a single phone call from the hospital. He had sworn never to date again, convinced that no one could replace her laughter, her warmth, or the way she made life feel whole. But loneliness had a way of whispering louder each year, and when his friend Ryan signed him up for a dating app, Ethan reluctantly agreed to one meeting. The woman's name was Emily, and she had suggested this cafe, the Willow Room, because, as she wrote in her message, it was quiet enough to hear someone's heart, not just their voice. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of unexpected moments, please take a second to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. Stories like this remind us that even in life's darkest corners, light can still find us. Ethan looked around the cafe, where soft jazz played in the background and the aroma of roasted coffee mingled with the faint sweetness of baked cinnamon rolls. His table for two sat empty, except for a single vase with a daisy, simple, gentle, and lonely. Much like him, Emily was 15 minutes late. He wasn't the type to get angry about that. He just assumed it was another sign that maybe he wasn't meant to be here. He sipped his coffee and let his mind drift to Claire again, her laughter that used to echo through their kitchen when he burned breakfast, the way she'd tuck her hair behind her ear when she was nervous, the soft hum she made when folding laundry. It felt unfair that time had moved on without her, and maybe that's why he had resisted love for so long, because loving someone new felt like betraying someone gone just as he decided to pay the bill and leave. A small voice interrupted his thoughts. "Excuse me, sir," it said. Ethan looked up, startled. A little girl, no more than 6 or 7, stood beside his table. She had bright brown eyes, her hair tied back in a neat ponytail, and she clutched a small pink notebook against her chest. She looked a little nervous but determined, like she had rehearsed this moment in her head. Ethan blinked. "Hi," he said softly, unsure what else to say. The girl smiled shyly and asked, "Are you here for my mommy?" The question hit him like a wave. The world seemed to pause for a moment. "Your mommy?" he asked gently. She nodded earnestly. She said she was meeting someone special here. She told me he might look kind. Ethan's heart twisted. He glanced toward the cafe's entrance, half expecting to see a woman rushing in, but no one came. He looked back at the little girl. "I think I might be," he said, his voice careful, almost trembling. The girl's smile grew. "Mommy said if you came, I should tell you she's running late because my shoe broke and she had to fit it. But she's coming soon." Ethan couldn't help but laugh softly, the tension easing just a little. "I see." He said, "You have an important job." Then she nodded proudly and climbed into the seat across from him without hesitation, setting her pink notebook on the table. "Mommy said I could sit with you so you wouldn't get bored." As the little girl began doodling on her notebook, Ethan felt something shift in him. There was an innocence in her presence, a warmth that softened the cold edges of his loneliness. They talked while waiting about her favorite cartoons, her dog named Max, and how she wanted to be an artist when she grew up. She showed him a drawing of a house with stick figures, a woman, a man, and a child holding hands under a sun. "That's me and Mommy," she explained proudly. "And that's maybe you." He froze for a moment, taken aback. "Me?" he asked with a smile that hid the ache in his chest. "Yeah," she said simply, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, "because Mommy said maybe tonight she'll meet someone who makes her heart feel safe." Something about those words cracked something open inside him. Makes her heart feel safe. He hadn't thought about safety in love before. He had thought about chemistry, laughter, even fate, but safety, that was something deeper, something he used to have. Once minutes turned into nearly an hour, and Emily still hadn't arrived. The little girl who introduced herself as Lily was now sipping a small cup of hot chocolate, her feet swinging back and forth. Ethan didn't mind the wait anymore. For the first time in years, he felt at peace. Then the cafe door opened. A woman in her early 30s rushed in, her hair slightly tousled from the wind. Her eyes searched the room frantically until they landed on Lily, and then Ethan. Relief flooded her face as she hurried over. "I'm so sorry," she said breathlessly, touching her daughter's shoulder. "Lily, you can't just run ahead like that." Lily giggled. "But Mommy, I told him you were coming." Ethan stood, trying to mask his nervousness. The woman, Emily, wasn't what he had expected. She wasn't overly glamorous or polished. Instead, there was a quiet beauty about her. She wore a soft blue sweater and no makeup, her eyes tired, but kind. There was a gentleness in her voice when she apologized again. I really am sorry, my car had a flat tire, and I couldn't find a cab for a while. Thank you for keeping her company. Ethan smiled. She's great company, he said honestly. They both sat down, and for a moment, silence filled the air, a comfortable silence. Emily took a deep breath, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I wasn't sure if I should come tonight, she admitted. I haven't done this in years. My husband passed away when Lily was 2. Ethan froze. A strange, quiet understanding passed between them. I'm sorry, he said softly. I lost my wife 3 years ago. Their eyes met in that instant. It felt like the world stopped spinning for both of them, not because of attraction or fate, but because they saw in each other the same ache, the same loneliness, and the same fragile hope. As they talked, the café grew quieter. Time seemed to slip away. They shared stories of love, of loss, of nights spent wishing things had turned out differently. Emily spoke about how hard it was to raise Lily alone, working double shifts and still trying to smile for her daughter. Ethan told her how he used to visit the park every Sunday, sitting on the same bench where he and Claire once watched the sunset. By the time they finished their coffee, the rain had stopped outside. The world seemed softer somehow. Ethan offered to walk them to their car, and Emily agreed. Lily held his hand as they walked through the glistening streets, her small fingers gripping his like she had known him all her life. When they reached the car, Lily looked up at him and said, "Can we see you again?" Emily looked embarrassed. Lily. But Ethan knelt down, smiling. "I'd like that," he said gently. That night, when Ethan got home, he found himself smiling for the first time in years, not because he had found love again, but because he had found hope. He realized that maybe love doesn't always return in grand gestures or fireworks. Sometimes it walks back into your life disguised as a little girl asking, "Are you here for my mommy?" Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Ethan and Emily started meeting often, sometimes for coffee, sometimes at the park where Lily loved to draw. There was no rush, no forced romance, just quiet understanding. Lily adored Ethan, often calling him her story buddy. Every time she smiled, Ethan felt something heal inside him. He learned that Emily's life hadn't been easy after her husband's passing, and she learned that Ethan still spoke to Claire, sometimes whispering to her photo when life felt heavy. But instead of feeling threatened by their pasts, they honored them together. They learned that grief doesn't have to end. Love it can teach you how to love more deeply. One evening, nearly a year after that first café meeting, Ethan stood in his kitchen, stirring a pot of soup while Lily sat at the counter coloring. Emily walked in, holding 2 mugs of tea. It had become their little tradition, quiet dinners and long talks after Lily went to bed. As the night wore on, Emily looked at Ethan with tears in her eyes. "Do you ever think they'd be happy for us?" she asked softly. He smiled sadly. "I think they'd be the ones who brought us together in that moment." The silence between them was filled with something unspoken, gratitude, love, healing. It wasn't a love that erased the past, it was one that grew from it. A year later, at the same café where it all began, Ethan found himself sitting at that same booth again. The vase with the single daisy was there just as before, but this time, the seat across from him wasn't empty. Emily sat there, her hand resting over his. Lily was at the next table, drawing another picture, this time of 3 people holding hands under a bright yellow sun. When the waiter came by, Ethan smiled and said, "This table used to feel empty." Not anymore, because sometimes love doesn't come when you search for it. It comes when you've stopped looking, when you're sitting alone at a table, and a little girl with a pink notebook asks the question that changes your life forever. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more real, emotional stories to life. Special request, tell us in the comments what part of this story moved you the most, and do you believe that second chances can heal broken hearts?